Hello and good day everyone. Welcome to the part 4 of our Excel VBA web automation series. And today we will focus on the data entry function using web automation. So on the previous topics that we talk on how to navigate to the website, and then the last topic focus on waiting to an element to exist before you do something to it, like this text box. Before we input a value, we need to make sure first that this element is existing within the page to ensure that we will not encounter any web page error. Okay, so I removed the code that we already have to make it clear to you those additional code that we will add for today. So again, the first thing that we need to do is navigate to the Facebook site. So you can do that by calling the function that we have for ie navigate, which is ie navigate. So ie that or ie navigate, and then just provide a link, and then after that we need to wait for an element to exist within this page. We can just wait for just a one element, because for example this text box, when we see that this is already existing, we can ensure that all the other element is already existing within this page. So since I need this element, I will do inspect element. So here in the developers window of the Google Chrome, under the element tab, once you inspect element this object, the source code or the code for that object will be highlighted here, and you can see that that is an input type of element. So wait for an element to exist. So I will be calling the wait element function, and well, I need to make a condition here. So wait element, and provide the parameter. So the element I want to use is input type, and I will be using the ID attribute, and the value of that attribute is email. And I think I can just send 20 seconds for this program to wait for that object to exist if there will be any web page error. So if that is equals to false, then it means that uh, uh, element did not exist. So you can simply say that's a critical message, and once that is encountered by the program, this code should be terminated. Okay, so once the program return a true value here, it means that this object already exists. So now we will start the data entry process by inputting the email address to the text box. So how to input a value to an input element. So there are two ways to do that actually. So there is a simple way, and it's just a one line of code. You can simply write ie.document.getElementByID, and look for that ID, which is email. That value is equals to whatever value you want to send to that element. Okay, so this one line of code, you can only use that if there is an ID attribute. You can do that by simply ie.document.getElementByID, and you can do that by using ie.document.all. So once you use the .all, it also assumes that you are using the ID attribute of that element. So these two lines of codes are only the same, and we'll just do the same thing. And then that's the first option that you can use. And there is also a what they call that document that get elements by name, email, that value. So sometimes this works, sometimes it don't, because well, I will not recommend using this type of approach because you cannot avoid having multiple input element with the same name like email. So again, I will not recommend to you for you to do that. So the only option to have a one line of code inputting a value to an element is this way, for the ie.document.all. Okay, but what if the id attribute is not part of this element? So if that's the case, what you can do is to create uh, a for loop to all input type of element and use another attribute for that element that you think is only unique for this element. So for example is I will creating for loop for each int in ie.document that get elements by tag name input next inp. So for example, the attribute I want to use is the name instead. So but again, name sometimes is not a good option, so maybe we can use this test id attribute instead. So I'll be using test id is equals to, let's get this value, royal email, then we can input the value to this element like example at gmail.com, and then exit for. Again, every time we use for each loop, uh, when you are just targeting a one element and once you found it, make sure that you will add the exit for, so this loop will already stop looking or checking the other element that are input type. So again, don't forget to use that. And we'll just test this first line of code first, so I'll comment this out for now. So let's try to navigate to the facebook.com and check if our code will run correctly. Okay, so it populate this text box. So now let's try this other code. Let's see if it will do the same thing. So uncomment that first and then let's comment this one. So oops, I think it did not populate that one. Okay, so let's inspect what happened, why that was not populated. So okay, so we use a wrong attribute, that's why it was not able to populate the text box. It should be data test id, not just test id. So I'll just replace that and then try to run again this program. There, so they just do the same thing. So again, this approach depends on the scenario you have. If the id is available, you can use this one. But if id attribute is not available, you can use this one. Okay, so I hope that was clear on how to use this function or how to use this code. But I think for example, let's assume that all these text box that you can see in this page doesn't have an id. So would you like to do this thing for each field? Okay, so again, I hope you can remember that that is why we have a what we call a VBA function. So now I will create a function to input a value to an element that doesn't have an ID attribute. So going to our web function module, I'll just create another function which I will call input value, and again this this function should have parameters like what is the element, and then what is the attribute of that element, and what value of that attribute, and then what input. So what's the value you want to send to the element. Okay, so here let me just copy this. So let me cut that and paste it here. So instead of making this specific, we will use the ele parameter instead, and then this should be the attribute. So whatever attribute will be valid, and what's the value of the attribute we are looking for, and then the value should be the value of our W input parameter. Okay, so this function will not return anything, but yeah, let's not make it complicated yet. So instead of doing this, I will be using the function that I just created, but let me just close this first. So instead of creating a loop every time I need to input a value to each text box, I'll just need to call the function that we just created, and then send the property of this element that we want to use. So again, we will be using input type of element, and this is the attribute that we want to check, and the value of that attribute should be royal email, and the input that we want to send is email.com, and there. So as simple as that. So if you have 10 text box here, you just need to do this 10 times. Okay, so we'll try this code, and let's just wait. Okay, so it did what is expected to it. Okay, so that's all for now for this tutorial. On the next one, we will what are the other elements that we can control here? These are both text box. This is a button. So I think the next one should be how to click a button element. So see you on the next video.